50 years ago this month, the Soviet space program sent the first woman into space. Lucy Ash went to Russia to find out about Valentina Tereshkova's historic voyage.
For the first time, a Soviet woman has gone up into outer space.
First of all, a look at Valentina Tereshkova, and there she is, speaking to Mr. Khrushchev, hence the smile, no doubt.
I repeat, for the first time in the history of this world, a woman has gone up into outer space.
On a crackly connection from zero gravity, Valentina Tereshkova announced her radio call sign to anxious listeners on Earth. I am Chaika, she said repeatedly. I am Chaika, the Russian word for seagull. This sturdy 26-year-old with blue eyes and plump cheeks was the first woman in outer space. On the 16th of June 1963, in her orange spacesuit, grey boots and helmet stamped with the letters USSR, she squeezed into Vostok 6, a 2.5-metre capsule, and was shot into orbit, adding yet another first to the Soviet space race, after the first satellite, the first animal and the first man. In an interview she gave in 1977, Tereshkova was careful to share the credit for her achievement.
Полет космонавта вкладывается ведь огромный труд людей.
When a cosmonaut goes into space, he or she knows very well that it's not their work alone. There are thousands of workers who made the capsule, thousands of designers, engineers, doctors and other scientists who prepared them for the flight.
As a young girl, Tereshkova was fascinated by speed and movement. She once said she envied the engine drivers and wished she could be in their place, driving trains across the world. As a teenager, she looked to the skies and joined a parachute club.
This is the BBC Home Service. Here is the news. All Moscow is waiting to give a hero's welcome to the world's first spaceman, Major Gagarin of the Soviet Air Force.
After Yuri Gagarin, the first man to return from space in 1961, Tereshkova wrote to the authorities, begging to be sent into space. It was a long shot. She was a factory worker. But the Central Committee was eager to find proletarian heroes. Agents from the space program secretly came to watch her parachute jumps, and then she was invited to Moscow for cosmonaut training. But she wasn't alone.
Valentina Tereshkova, Жанна Yorkina, Valentina Ponomaryova.
Valentina Ponomaryova was one of the cosmonauts who trained alongside Tereshkova.
Нас было 5 человек.
There were 5 of us. At first we were a bit guarded, but soon we were spending more time together. We all lived in the same complex, we trained together, we ate our meals together and did everything together.
In some ways it sounds like a cross between the army and a holiday camp.
There was a piano in the canteen and all the cosmonauts would gather round in the evening. We were full of enthusiasm. We loved singing together, especially the new songs relating to space exploration.
On the 19th of November 1962, selection for the flights took place. The 2 Valentinas, Ponomaryova and Tereshkova, were the final candidates. But who would be the first Soviet woman in space? Ideology trumped expertise when it came to the final choice. Tereshkova mouthed her support for the party, and her daughter Yelena now admits that her fresh face caught the Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev's eye.
She was just a Soviet girl, which works at the factory, and that is why maybe she won.
Is it true that Khrushchev liked the way she looked?
And this is also one of the factors. She liked very much Jacqueline Kennedy, and maybe she compared them together.
You mean she modelled herself on Jackie Kennedy?
Jackie Kennedy, yes.
Poor Valentina Ponomaryova may have had the best test results, but she failed to impress the selection board. When asked, "What do you want from life?" she replied, "I want to take everything it can offer." Ponomaryova still can't hide her disappointment at being passed over.
It was a terrible moment when Tereshkova took off and we were left behind. They told us, don't fret, you'll all get the chance to go to space. We clung on to that hope for a very long time.
It makes you upset even now, all these years later.
Of course, that was putting it mildly. It seemed that my life was suddenly over. There was nothing else to live for.
Back in 1963, a British TV programme called What's New featured pictures from inside Tereshkova's space capsule.
And there is a pencil floating around, the pencil on which she makes notes on her pad, floating about in space. There it goes, out of the top of your screen. And there goes the pad too.
Tereshkova's conversation from space with Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev was broadcast around the world. Contact with ground control was intermittent during Tereshkova's 3 days in space. The further away the spaceship drifts, she later said, the more you start to miss the sounds of nature, of rainfall. And there were reports of problems. The mission controlled from back on Earth had to be modified. At the time, Tereshkova vehemently denied oversleeping, but later admitted to it. She also denies vomiting in the capsule, although these days nausea is recognised as a common reaction to space conditions.
She also did become quite ill, didn't she? The space food didn't agree with her.
No. It was not truth.
These come from the memoirs of some of the people involved in the first space program. And why would they make stuff up?
My mother told me about those people, and I myself also read these articles. And she told me people were very jealous, and it was very complicated times.
After 3 days in space, it was time for her return. At 7 kilometres above ground, she was catapulted out of the capsule, still stuck in the ejection chair. At 4 kilometres up, the parachute opened. I asked Yelena what her mother had told her about the moment she fell to Earth.
First of all, she was noticed by the peasants who lived near. Then they ran to her spaceship and start to touch her. Oh, you're alive, oh, you're so interesting. And what is it? And my mother showed them the food.
She let them taste her special space
food. The special food, because it is, for those people, it was very interesting. And my mother told me about a very, very old woman. She asked my mother, "Oh, daughter, you was in space. Did you see God there? Because you were very, very high." But my mother told her, "Unfortunately, no."
She was given a triumphant reception in Moscow after the flight. As she strode along a red carpet in white high heels, people called her Cinderella of the Stars and Gagarin in a skirt. After Tereshkova's somewhat faltering speech, she got a massive bear hug from Khrushchev before she was allowed to move along to a tiny stooped woman in a headscarf, her weeping mother. After the flight, Khrushchev organised a state wedding between Valentina and fellow cosmonaut Andriy Nikolaev. They divorced 19 years later when Yelena had grown up. But after Valentina's inspirational flight, her trail turned to cinders. It was 20 years before another woman was sent into orbit. And up until now, there have only been 3 Russian women in space.